very good evening to you from London. This is Arise News. I'm Gavin Ramjaun and welcome to Global Sports Report. These are the stories and results making the headlines on the programme tonight. The big kick-off. Will this be the year when soccer finally conquers the United States? Plus, ready whenever, the boss of the controversial 2022 World Cup speaks out about the possible change of date. And ice and easy. Just why is one of the Premier League's top managers dressed like this? Also on the programme, why this African team are about to create a world first. Hello from Global Sports Report. In the next half hour, we'll have all the results that matter from around the globe. And we'll be talking to our guest this evening, Jack Badu from the organisation Football Beyond Borders. Before we do, though, let's run through some of the key global sports results of the last 24 hours. And we'll start with the Cricket World Cup. And the defending champions India have become the second team to seal their place in the next round. They managed a 4-wicket victory over the West Indies earlier on. And they had MS Dhoni to thank. He led the side home with an unbeaten 45 after the West Indies had posted a score of 182. As well as guaranteeing their qualification for the knockout stages, India are now in pole position to finish top of Pool B, having won all their matches and with only fixtures against Ireland and Zimbabwe remaining. Here's the Indian captain.
The last few games that we have played, again in different conditions, the guys, they have stepped up, they have altered their length according to the condition of the wicket or how the wicket is behaving. So overall it's looking very complete, the performance so far. But again, as the guy rightly said, we dropped quite a few catches in this game, and they say catches win matches.
And tonight, two more titans of Pool B go head-to-head as South Africa face Pakistan. South Africa have 3 wins and 1 loss from their 4 matches, scoring more than 400 runs in their last 2 games. Key to the Proteas' performance will be the form of AB de Villiers. The captain scored an unbeaten 162 off 66 balls. Pakistan stumbled at first, losing their first 2 games against India and the West Indies. But the 1992 champions picked up 4 points with wins over Zimbabwe and the United Arab Emirates. Well, it's a quiet weekend in the English Premier League, but a crucial one in the FA Cup as the quarter-finals take place this weekend. This one to watch then, though, is on Monday when Manchester United take on Arsenal in the tie of the round. It's a competition with the only realistic hope of silverware for either side this season. Arsenal go into the game having won 8 of their last 10 games in the league and sit third in the table, just a point ahead of United. These are the thoughts of the man in charge of the Gunners, Arsene Wenger.
We are confident through our Premiership run. We feel we have needed confidence. We go to Manchester United to qualify, of course, and to give absolutely everything. And that's the target of the day. Hard work, team effort, and give absolutely everything. Both teams will do that. And I believe it could be a very interesting game.
The MLS season kicks off this weekend, and it's a huge year for soccer in the United States. The LA Galaxy won last year's championship, and with the threat of a players' strike over rights averted with a last-minute deal, this is set to be a record-breaking campaign. 21 teams are taking part for the first time, and record crowds are expected as the popularity of the sport grows. Galaxy kick off the campaign against Chicago Fire. Let's hear first from LA coach Bruce Arena, and then their midfielder Stefan Ishizaki.
Like every season, I think all the teams are pretty close to each other in this league, and it's important to get off to a good start. So certainly our first challenge is the Chicago Fire tomorrow, and try to get 3 points at home. That's something we didn't do last year, so hopefully we can get it done this year.
One of the hardest opponents we're going to have is ourselves. Really push ourselves and really stay focused and determined to win another one.
Well, let's get some more from today's talking points then with our guest Jack Badu from the group Football Beyond Borders. Evening to you, Jack. Yeah. Let's start first then with the MLS, Major League Soccer. Can it break through into the US mainstream market this year? The NBA and the NHL, the basketball and the ice hockey leagues there. They're getting lower attendances than some soccer games out there. So is this potentially the year for it?
I think it's definitely shifting. It's going to be a slow shift. I mean, people have been talking about 66,000 at the Orlando games. big players like Kaká and David Villa, you know, it's bound to change things. I think it's a very, very entertaining nation. They love sport, and in terms of soccer, it's an international game. It's bringing so many people together. So I think definitely, it's not quite there yet, but it's slowly shifting, I would say.
So the season starts, of course, this weekend. We know Steven Gerrard, Liverpool's stalwart and captain for many years, is going to the Galaxy next season. Is the key to the league sort of maintaining its sort of run and popularity the fact that they need to get more homegrown players in rather than importing sort of mega signings like Gerrard, Lampard and Kaká?
I think it's you've got to have both, and I think the way their college system is set up, it's fantastic. You know, you're drafting in some of the best athletes. You're giving them a good education and you're getting them at the right age, so you're bringing them in not sort of 16, 17, so you're going to end up having a Jack Wilshere type character who's going to, you know, do all sorts. So I think in terms of their national team, they're doing really, really well. And as long as you're bringing in the creme de la creme of players, you're bringing in the Gerrards, you're bringing in the Villas, you're bringing in the Robbie Keanes, you know, these are fantastic quality international players. So I think they've got a great way of sort of bringing in players into the league and sort of making sure that they harness the best of their own homegrown talent as well.
How much is, I mean, the contract disputes that are all over now were to do with the free agency situation at the end of players' contracts and minimum wages as well. I was reading that the average sort of salary for an American soccer player can be around the sort of $60,000 mark, which in relative comparison to other leagues around the world is pretty much nothing. But yet the big players obviously get multi-million-pound deals. I mean, how important is it that the league can compete financially with other European leagues?
It's a difficult one, and I think in terms of the crowds that they're bringing in, you do want to see that all your players are getting a fair wage. You know, if you're sitting in a dressing room with a player who's earning X amount of millions and you're just about getting by, you're not going to feel great. But you know, I think the way in which the league's set up, it's very, very sustainable, and they do have Mexico round the corner, and they've got so many other nations of people that would love to play in the MLS. You know, they're packing out their stadiums, so you know, for the sake of taking a slight pay cut, you just want to be in the league and you want to be playing. And
you look at sort of the popularity of the sport and the national consciousness. The World Cup did a lot to help with that. 89% of the population watched the US team doing so well in the World Cup this last summer just gone. Are those sort of factors? Are those kind of like sort of mainstream events, you know, critical for US soccer?
Definitely. You know, I mean, you can see the amount of support that they've had for maybe the last 10 years, and the game's growing. You know, David Beckham, it's completely changed the MLS, and Thierry Henry's done a lot more to even enhance that. So, and
even President Obama giving a message of thanks after the World Cup as well.
Exactly. So I think it's sort of the upper class sport. It's that fun, cool new thing in America. And you know, the more that we see of the MLS and the more players that are going over there, you know, the better it's going to be.
So looking ahead to the English Premier League season, or rather the FA Cup weekend this weekend, when we look at sort of how important the FA Cup ranks in terms of English Premier League teams, is it as important as it used to be? How critical is it for teams to win this cup now?
Well, I mean, it is definitely as important as it used to be. I mean, for the teams that used to be winning the league, Arsenal and Manchester United,
it's a massive change.
This could be their only chance of silverware. And then for the teams lower down the league, they just want to get to Wembley. You know, it'd be a fantastic day for Reading, it'd be a fantastic day for Bradford if they do even get into the semi-finals. But you know, for fans of Arsenal and Manchester United, you know, this is where the bragging rights of who's actually won any silverware are coming from. So
that's right.
It is extremely important, and there's no chance of either of them winning the Champions League. Well, definitely not Man United anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Arsenal trailing to Monaco in that game. We'll hopefully get onto that result in a moment. But when it comes to the congestion within the fixture list for English Premier League sides, especially ones that are chasing Champions League honours, English Premier League honours, Manchester City and Chelsea, nowhere to be seen at the moment. So, is there an argument that they're deprioritising the FA Cup to a point?
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to look at where you're going to find joy. And I think for Arsenal now, you might as well put out your 16, 17-year-olds against Monaco and count it as a loss. They need to get fourth spot, and they need to bring home some form of trophy, which isn't going to be the Premier League. For Manchester United, similarly, they need that fourth spot, and they do need a trophy. I think for teams like Chelsea, who are potentially chasing the Champions League, FA Cup isn't as important, but they've got a fantastic squad. And I think any manager that's complaining about congestion, you know, you have to look at who you've got in your squad and whether you've got a squad that's good enough to play 2 to 3 games a week. which is really, really important, I guess.
And so when you look at these European games coming up, there's only Chelsea pretty much who've got a realistic chance of going through in the Champions League stages. Arsenal, you know, they lost 3-1 at home to Monaco in their last match. I mean, what do you think that the English Premier League sides are trailing in terms of sort of talent and strategic management compared to other European teams?
I think it's a completely different game. You know, that international game, you can't go out and put your best Premier League 11 and expect them to do a job. Jose Mourinho has got a squad of fantastic players all the way through. I think if you're Arsene Wenger and you're bringing Bellerin to a Champions League game when he's not even played a full season, you know, there's not really a chance of you doing that well. In the case of Manchester City, I think it's a new squad still. They're still struggling to get that continuity, and hopefully, you know, next season we should see a little bit more from them. But I just think only Chelsea are the sort of team to have any sort of success this year, definitely, without a doubt.
There we are, Jack. Thank you very much indeed. Now, still to come on the programme, cycling's flagship event, the Tour de France, might be 4 months away. But this year's lineup will feature an African team for the first time. We'll tell you more in the next part of the show.
Wherever and whatever your banking needs, Guarantee Trust Bank will be there, now and into the future. Because you're at the heart of everything we do. Guarantee Trust Bank, proudly African, truly international.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Welcome back to Global Sports Report from Arise News. I'm Gavin Ramjaun. Right, let's take you through some of the stories making headlines around the world this Friday evening. Qatar will be ready to deliver a World Cup in 2022, no matter when the tournament is played. That's the verdict from the organising committee chief Hassan Al Thawadi. FIFA are set to vote on a recommendation to stage the tournament in November or December, or and December even, over the cooler months in the Gulf states where temperatures can reach 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. At a summit in New York, he said they'll comply with the decision when it arrives, but accepted work still needs to be done with construction and improving the country's image.
Whatever the football community decides in terms of hosting the World Cup, but our plans have been from the very beginning, and up until the decision or the recommendation was provided and the decision gets made on the 19th of March, because the decision still isn't finalized. Yeah. But once the decision is finalized or gets made, we are ready to commit to whatever the football community decides. But our plans from day one have always been on the Summer World Cup. Now, once the decision gets made, whatever decision gets made, we will comply with it, and we're ready to comply with it.
China's Zhu Shiming and flyweight champion Amnat Runring have been facing up to each other at the weigh-in ahead of their IBF World title fight. China's double Olympic gold medal winning Shiming will be hopeful of beating his 35-year-old Thai opponent for the flyweight title. Zhu is competing in just his 7th professional fight with trainer Freddie Roach against an unbeaten opponent. The match in Macau this weekend will be available to a potential audience of 1 billion people. The $500 million retractable roof for the Arthur Ashe Stadium is well underway. The venue, which plays host to the US Open tennis final, had its first steel column in November. Work is expected to continue until late spring, where there'll be a pause for the summer's tournament, with the work expected to be completed for next year's championship. The renovation project will be the largest in the world for a tennis venue. Cycling now, and the world's biggest race, the Tour de France, is just 4 months away. It's been dominated by European and US riders, but now, for the first time, a team from Africa will be competing. They're hard at work in training in South Africa for what is one of the sport's biggest challenges. This report from Julie Jamont.
For these cyclists, training has gone up a gear in 2015. Their team, MTN Quebecer, will be the first ever African team to participate in the Tour de France. Each of these riders hopes to be one of the 9 selected to compete with the stars of the cycling world come July. For the organisers of the tournament, it's a PR message, an open invitation to the world, and the coaches are convinced their athletes are up to the challenge.
It's marketing, it's clever marketing, but I also think that the riders that will compete at the Tour de France will be competitive. They've showed themselves that they are good in the Vuelta a España, so I can't see it being a problem.
The team has a few experienced European riders in its numbers, but more than half are African, hailing from Eritrea, Ethiopia and South Africa. And while team manager Douglas Ryder has no illusions of coming home with a yellow jersey, he is hoping his cyclists will win a few of the race stages.
Our African riders are really good at climbing. They're very young, very light, very strong riders that can go up the mountains easily. So we'll focus the African riders in our team on the second part of the Tour de France and the mountains, and then the first part we'll focus on with our European riders in the classics type racing on the cobblestones in France and in northern Europe to try and do well there.
Young hopeful Kamani Dlamini is one of the team's rising stars. He finished second in the under-23 category of a recent national time trial, and at only 19 years old, he has his sights set on bigger challenges.
My hopes for the future is to also try and ride the Tour de France one day. Well, that's my biggest dream, and maybe Olympics.
The invitation has given miles of motivation to this young team, all hoping to be pioneers in a new African era of this global sport.
Yes, we wait and see indeed. Now, the new Formula One season kicks off next weekend, and 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel is hoping his new team Ferrari can improve on last year's dismal season, where they failed to win a single race. Double world champion Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg are widely expected to dominate again this year for Mercedes, with the Briton winning 11 races and his teammate 5 last season. But Vettel will be hoping that Ferrari will be the strongest challengers. The season kicks off with the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne next Sunday.
It depends how strong and dominant Mercedes will start into the season. It's expected they'll be very strong. But for the pack behind them, it will be very tense. I hope we're there and establish ourselves in the mid to long term this season as the second force. That would be a huge step forward. Of course, the core team is Italian, and their pride for the Ferrari brand is noticeable. It's something very special. That's a big difference. Otherwise, I'd say another big difference is the fact that almost everything is happening under the same roof. In Maranello, not only the car is built, but also the engine, and I think this carries a lot of advantages.
FIFA President Sepp Blatter has warned football that it has to do more to fight racism. The first black player to represent England, Ben Odeje, has been speaking about his experiences in the game, and now he's helping to educate youngsters on the evils of racism. He spoke earlier to my colleagues Vanessa and Heather Scott.
Well, I actually believe that something should be done, because we can't have incidents like this happening, spoiling the game for us. The FA have been doing things, the European governing body are trying, but something has to be done sooner rather than later.
And what good examples are there within football? Because I know you're trying very hard, aren't you, to work with your former club, Charlton Athletic, to get rid of the scourge of racism. What are you doing?
I think we're actually going into schools and preaching the game that we know that and we love also. I think starting from grassroots, if we can educate the youngsters that are going to be the footballers of the future, that this is wrong, this is right. Once that is introduced to the kids or to the children, maybe as they grow up, they will understand that racism isn't something that we would tolerate in the game.
Give us an idea of what it was like for you. I mean, you go back to 1971 and when you played for England's youth team. Compare the racism then to the kind of racism now.
In those days, racism was widely accepted in more ways than one. I mean, players used to have bananas thrown at them. Players would be abused by the crowd. Even the players that you're playing against would start doing things that will put you off your game. But things have changed, and it's not as bad as it was in those days, but still, racism is still raising its ugly head these days.
I mean, football, very obviously a team sport. Surely having those kind of divisions within a team makes it very hard to play well together. Did you find that within teams a black player would experience that sort of racism?
Yes, but don't forget, when you're being racially abused during a game, it shows that you're doing something that is hurting the club that you're playing against. That, with me, that used to make me play even better, because I know if I wasn't playing well, those people who have been racially abusing me or throwing things at me would not do that. So that used to give me the impetus to actually even play better.
So what do you think of the makeup of the England squad now, the diversification in the England squad? Are you happy with it?
Yes, I'm happy, because if they weren't good enough, they wouldn't be picked. So those black players who are playing for England now are playing because they're worth their place in the team.
Now, when we introduced you as the first black man to play football for England. And this in itself is a very good story, isn't it? Because for many years, it was Laurie Cunningham who was thought to have been the first black man who played in 1977. Yes. You were playing for the youth side in 1971. Yeah. Tell us how this sort of has come to be recognised only of late.
Well, I think this actually happened when ITV they did a documentary on Laurie Cunningham, and they actually said he was the first black footballer to play for England. And a friend of mine who works at the BBC obviously knew the story. I mean, I would say relations, friends that I went to school with knew that I was the first black footballer. It's only the general public that did not know that. So this friend of mine at the BBC obviously saw the programme and said, look, Ben, this is not right. Can we put it right? Is there anything you want us to do? So I said, well, if you can go to the governing, well, if you can go to the heads of the BBC, if there's anything you can do, please go ahead. And he did. As you can see, the rest is history.
And Laurie Cunningham himself has recognised your place in history.
Yes, but unfortunately, Laurie Cunningham died a few years back, and I'm sure he knew, because Laurie Cunningham and myself, we used to be friends. When he was an apprentice at Orient, I was an apprentice at Charlton, so we used to play against each other, so we knew about this. Even the England youth team, the England schoolboys, we had trials together at Bisham Abbey, so that was the first place that Laurie Cunningham and I met.
At the time, when you played for the first time for England, you drew comparisons with Pelé, didn't you? And people were calling you man of the match. It was no mean debut, shall we say?
Pelé, I think, is in my opinion, the world's greatest player. To be put in the same pedestal as him as an honour to me. But
others did. It was in the papers at the time.
Yes, it was. But I did what I had to do, and to be recognised as a player in the same vein as Pelé is an honour to me also. But I did what I had to do on that day.
Your mum wasn't pleased that you decided to go for football, was she?
No, because as an African child, we believe in education. And most of our parents that came to England, they came purposely to be educated to find a better life. So come to England, get educated, go back and set up. But when I chose the path of a sportsman, it wasn't looked upon favourably, and because we respect people with initials after their names. So for me to actually say I am going into sports, my parents did not obviously like it so much.
Ben and AJ talking there. Now let's have a look at what's getting the world's attention on sporting social media today. Southampton boss Ronald Koeman decided to do something rather alternative to halt his team's slide in form. He took his side off to the Swiss resort of Davos for a mid-season break to take in some ice hockey. There was Koeman in full attire, and that's the day's itinerary there. That's all we've got time for tonight. We're back tomorrow at 10:30 GMT. We'll see you soon.